You know, when a new producer shows up and one of the first things they do is go, all right, we're listening to everyone online and we can clearly see that people want to see something else, so let's just restructure the schedule and show you what you actually want to see instead of delaying it for no reason. That's when you know that you actually have someone that is right for the job. Hello and welcome, folks. We finally got some more overdress news. It looks like Tuesday will become our new Christmas, and every Tuesday we will get new overdress news, whether that's about merch or what's in starter decks or what's in booster sets or effects, whatever. We have 9 weeks of overdress news and we just finished up week 2, so let's get into it. Before that, just like Dr. O blueballed us all, I'm also gonna blueball you guys as well because we have some other things to take a look at first. I normally don't cover new card reveals too much, or I personally don't like to, especially like not in the moment, like I'm like, wow, react, and like not really talk about analytically, but I wanted to quickly talk about Ethics Buster. So Ethics Buster has 2 skills. First one is when you ride him or when you ride over him, discard 2 and then choose a Blau named unit and stand it, and then attack your opponent's Vanguard with it. At the end of that battle, if the attack did not hit, then you can stand it. If it did hit, then for that turn, that unit loses 1 drive. And also Vanguard Circle, when your Beastie unit attacks, you can count +1 to give it 5k. So pulling that aside, I think this card is actually pretty cool. So this is like one of the few client selection reveals that I looked forward to just from the announcement alone. There's some decks that I really enjoyed from just playtesting, so stuff like Time Leaper Dragon, Maiden of Stand Peony, and like decks like that I wasn't too excited about, but after playing them I was like, this is really fun. And this card definitely kind of fits that fancy as well. They got really good grade 1 and grade 2 supporting units that help you plus or restand your stuff, and I think this card is really nice because for standard it might not be super hot, simply because like Beast Deities are already a really nice archetype because they are made in a really cool way in the sense that things happen whether your attacks hit or don't hit, and I love that kind of dimension in the game. But this just allows you to have a lot of nice pressure, like both in standard and premium. I feel like I'm going to be enjoying to deck build this deck in both standard and premium and test it on stream at some point this week as well. So it's interesting because a lot of the pieces kind of enable this deck to actually be not too bad. I think the biggest problems I'm seeing right now is the lack of power, because it literally gains no power, so even if they let it hit and you lose the drive, then if they check a defensive, a lot of your stuff gets shut down, and that's not exactly sexy or cash money for that reason. We're also getting a bunch of promos. So apparently we're getting some promos specifically for Oracles, Angels, Shadows, Nobatama, Pale Moon, and Neo Nectar, and so we got 3 of those this week, and we're probably going to get the other 3 maybe next week. Shrug, who knows. But the OTT one basically lets you, once you ride her from grade 1 to grade 2, you can discard a card to add a Protect to your hand, and then when she attacks on Rearguard Circle, you can reveal any number of Sentinels from your hand for her to gain plus 5k for every Sentinel in hand. So basically feels like Coco support almost, which is pretty nice. The grade 1 for the Angels basically lets you on ride, discard 1, draw 1, and then at the beginning of your opponent's battle phase, you can put her into your soul to choose 2 of your grade 1 or higher rear guards and choose 2 of them for that turn, give them intercept, and also let them intercept from the back row, which is also really nice because it's soul, which a lot of Angel Feather builds need, and on top of that it also lets you clear out your board, so in builds like Malkuth Melik you can just revive it again next turn with a bunch of on-play skills if you have any of those. And the Neo Nectar card is also pretty nice, basically making it so that your tokens in the same column cannot be chosen by effects, and then counterblasting 1 and resting herself on Rearguard Circle to call 2 plant tokens and giving your Vanguard plus 10k if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or higher. So again, pretty good support for both Asha and Stand Peony, so I think that is also pretty good. Finally, a little bit of Zero news. They showed some Liberator support this time. We got the grade 2 that when your Blaster Blade Liberator is placed, if your Vanguard's Liberator gains 5k, so 14k attacker is pretty decent. We also got the Doring clone for Blaster Blade Liberator as well, and they also showed that Ganslot Zenith is getting a lot of buffs, so his first skill kind of stayed the same. When he attacks the Vanguard, count +1, put a rear guard in the bottom of your deck. If you do, then call the top card of your deck and give that unit plus 10k, so that's what he originally had, plus being a cross ride from the Ganslot Break Ride. But he also got a new skill where if you call him from the deck on a rearguard circle, you can put him back to your deck to search your deck for a Blaster Blade Liberator and call it. If you don't have any Blaster Blade Liberator left in your deck, then you call him from drop zone instead. This is really cool because it's kind of like the Royal Paladin Ganslot that basically like puts itself back to deck to search out the Blaster Blade, except this one is like, oh, your top deck call was, you know, maybe your heal if you have him as a heal. Well, just put me back and get a grade 2 out of it. So for that reason, this is actually really, really nice, and so for Zero, this looks pretty good too. Alright, so now the real reason why you're here is of course for the overdress news, and this was, you know, the reason why I was here to begin with as well. And so the nicest thing that I kind of talked about in the intro is that the moment that Mori Producer actually stepped on the stage, he essentially said that like they looked at all the feedback they were getting online, whether it was in Japanese or in English, and saw what players actually wanted to see. So saw some of their kind of gripes with the stream, saw some of their gripes with the way the information was being relayed, and they basically, he looked at that and he was like, let's change things up, because normally this week we're supposed to get like merchandise, like sleeves and deck boxes and stuff for overdress, but instead they were like, you know what, people want to see what the Persona Ride mechanic does, let's show them what the Persona Ride mechanic does. And I love that, the fact that he's so in touch with the community, not just the Japanese community but also the global community, which is probably proportionally louder than the Japanese community purely because of how much noise we actually make. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll leave that up to your interpretation. But so he basically showed a few announcements. First things first is that apparently every 26th day of the month is going to be Vanguard Day, because I believe Vanguard did start on February 26th of 2011. So basically on Vanguard Day there will be every shop that has Bushiroad tournaments will be able to hold a Vanguard Day event where the winners don't really get anything, but just for playing and whether you win or lose, everybody gets a quick shield that you see here on the left, and also this MLB playmat will be gifted to random players that participate. So whether you win or lose doesn't really matter, as long as you participate you have a chance to win this Majesty Lord Blaster playmat. On top of that, they also showed us some of the box toppers, such as these sleeves, which we get 4 copies of each sleeve for the ride deck that are themed after each of the main characters. So we see the blue Yu ones, the pink Danji ones, the red Toya ones, the green Megumi ones, the sort of white vanilla Tomari ones, the purple really good looking Masanori ones, and the sort of grayish blue Sagusa ones. So these sleeves look really nice. They'll be coming at 4 copies per sleeve, just perfect for your ride deck. I really like the purple and the vanilla ones. They look really good. Some of the other ones are a little bit too strong in that respective color, so they feel a little bit overbearing, I guess is a good way to put it, but still very nice. We also saw that there'll be some campaigns for the launch of the set. So for example, you know, if you pre-order the box, you get the special over trigger with the anime art, but also 333 people will have a chance to win this playmat with the, you know, what looks to be the evolved Trickstar, or the Victor Jet Dragon as some people have been calling him. Now, a really big thing that just came out of nowhere is that we got the entire set list for the first starter deck, which is the Dragon Empire Yu one. So first things first, we see here on the bottom, it says that the Nirvana card will come as in a triple rare foiling once per starter deck. So just one triple rare foiling in the starter deck. So of course, you know, for the price decrease, they had to cut some costs somewhere. But let's look at the actual contents of this. So first things first, Nirvana, our boss card, the grade 3, will come at 4 copies. Then we have a supporting grade 2 called Reiyu, which will come at 4 copies as well. And then we have a supporting grade 1 called Rino, which will come at 4 copies as well. And these are the sort of like dragon dancers that we saw in the trailer art as well. Then the Sunrise Egg, which is the egg we've been seeing in the trailers, will come as a starter as 1 copy. Then supporting cards, we have Inferno Sword, which will come at 3 copies as our backup grade 3. Then the Verina, which will be our supporting grade 2 in 4 copies. And then we have the Anki Bora, so Anki Bowler maybe, which is going to be a grade 1 coming at 3 copies. Now looking at the second part, we see 4 copies of the Hayashikaze, which is a grade 1 perfect guard. So 4 grade 1 perfect guards. They will continue this tradition that they've had throughout the V series. Whether we will have draw PGs or not returning, I really hope we do. I think that's one of the best things to come out of the V series, but at least in the starter decks we will have grade 1 PGs, so that is definitely very appreciated. And very interesting here is that we get 4 copies of Trickstar, the grade 0 mascot Trickstar, which is just a grade 0, no triggers, and we don't know what it does. So maybe it's going to support the mechanic, which we'll talk about in a second. Then looking at triggers, we get 1 over trigger, which is the Orubaria. Then we get 4 critical triggers, which is the Zonne. Then we get 4 draw triggers, which is the Chokusha. Then we get 3 front triggers, which is the Nikko. And then we get 4 heal triggers, which is the Rona. And then the coolest thing about all this is that we get 3 order cards. 3 order cards called Sunburst Evolution, and it's a grade 2 order. So this slide on its own confirmed that orders are not going to waste. These sort of spell cards that were introduced to Vanguard that a lot of us said we want to see this being explored more and more in the future are actually going to continue being a thing, and I think a lot of us are really happy about that. I personally, when I saw that, I was really thrilled, and I hope that every starter deck has order cards in it because I think it's cool design and it's something that should definitely be explored more in this new series. And of course, I've teased it since the start, and the Persona Ride mechanic, which we've seen at the very top left of the new boss card, is finally revealed as well. So what is the new mechanic for the new series called Persona Ride? It is actually as straightforward as it gets. So Persona Ride says, if your Vanguard has a Persona Ride icon, and then you ride a card with the same name as that unit, then you get to draw one card, and for that turn your front row gets a continuous plus 10,000 power. So this is interesting because it's not that it gives plus 10k to the units in the front row at that time, but it puts a continuous buff to the front row for that turn, so that even if you don't have any units in the front row, you can call them there and they will get that buff once they are on the field. So this of course has gotten a lot of people discussing. Even I already did my sort of first impressions on Twitter. Some of the good things are that it's very simple and easy to understand. You literally ride the same named card over another one to get plus 10k power to the front row. It is also capped, which means that unlike gifts, they do not stack over time. This is a for that turn type of buff. So once your turn is over, that plus 10k buff fizzles, and then you're gonna have to ride the same named card again next turn to actually reestablish it. So for that reason, I think it's actually quite nice, and you might even have to keep that extra card in hand sometimes because you only have so many copies of it in your deck, right? And if there's no consistent way to search it, that's also going to make it kind of more sparing in use. So gonna have to be really careful with that in my opinion. And because it cannot be abused like gifts and it is a turn 4 mechanic, it feels much better because this means that when you ride grade 3 for the first time, you have to wait until the next turn to ride over it to trigger that actual plus 10k to that front row and the draw 1. And the nice thing is that they clarified that the ride deck can only be used to actually advance your grade. So you can't do something like ride your grade 3 and then next turn discard 1 to ride from the ride deck. So you cannot do that. You have to ride from the ride deck first while you're on grade 2 to grade 3, otherwise you won't be able to use it later. They also mentioned that G assist will not be used in the new standard D series because of the ride deck. So they basically decided it is a little bit, just kind of like what's the point of it type of thing. And so they said no, G assist will not be in the new series. So this mechanic turns off spamming, so it does end after one turn. The only real complaint that I think some people kind of had, and definitely my first impression of was as well, was just that it's a little bit bland. I think that's the only thing for some people, is that it's a little bit bland and that, just draw one card and give plus 10k to your front row. And it didn't feel like, if this is the mechanic that all nations share and like every single Persona ride does the same thing, it feels a little bit bland. But then I kind of thought about it, well, if this is just kind of part of the rules, right? It's kind of like how striding, you didn't really think about the fact that a stride gets plus 15k power in addition to the base power of the grade 3 that you stride on top of. So this is, I'm kind of thinking of it as sort of like a stride. Like this 10k just happens if you have 2 of the same grade 3 and you ride over it on turn 4 or later turns, of course. So if you kind of think of it like that, it's just a sort of like this kind of like push turn to increase your kind of like your opponent's damage or to try to finish the game there, then it doesn't really feel, I don't know, maybe not even that bland. It definitely doesn't feel even that aggressive, to be honest. Of course, that depends on how big the trigger powers will be, whether they'll be 5k or 10k, and also the shield numbers, because we've seen grade 1s already go down to 5k shield, which feels a little bit weird. Maybe they reduce shield for some amazing abilities that we don't know yet, but we're gonna find out in due time. And of course, the English side of Wishard also put on their Twitter a little bit of explanation on Persona riding. So first things first, they said, during the turn when I rode a grade 3 unit on a grade 2 unit, can I continue to use Persona ride? No, you cannot. You can only ride once a turn. You'll be able to use Persona ride in the next turn. So as I said, it is a turn 4 mechanic. Question, after using Persona ride, I called a rearguard to the front row. Does this rearguard get power plus 10k? Yes, it does. Question, on the turn after I rode a grade 3 unit directly from hand, can I ride a grade 3 from my ride deck and perform a Persona ride? No, you cannot. You can only ride one grade above your current Vanguard when riding from the ride deck, therefore you are unable to use Persona ride. So these are some really nice little explanations that they added on top of that, just to make sure people don't make any confusions. There's still some other questions I personally have that I hope get answered eventually, such as, like in premium, can I like Persona ride, give 10k to my front row, and then stride it to something that then like makes use of that plus 10k? Sounds like it does, but we're going to find out in due time once the actual comprehensive rulings are updated. Also, some people said, and this was definitely kind of the feeling immediately, was like, ooh, it's going first favored. But, that is true, but at the same time, because it is a turn 4 mechanic, it kind of feels like it gives enough time for both players to actually like get to the grade 3 spot and actually have enough cards, because keep in mind that now, with the new starters, only the player going second actually draws an extra card. So let's say both players start with 5 card hands. Player going first draws for turn, then they discard 1 and they ride from their ride deck, so they're still at 5, and then they pass because they can't attack. Player going second starts at 5 cards in hand, draws for turn, then they discard 1 to ride from ride deck. Starter then says, draw 1 card because you went second, and then they can attack, so now they have 7 cards in hand. So then the opponent, comes back to their turn, draws, discards, and rides, and then, they attack, drive check and go up to 6 and stuff like that. So overall, the player going second, even though they won't be able to use this mechanic first, they will still be having like a bigger hand. And because of that, I think that it's actually quite well balanced and it feels like they know what they're doing. So I'm gonna just go ahead and say that this is a nice mechanic. It feels well balanced. It doesn't feel overwhelming. Of course, if the shield powers are really low and we go back to like triggers having 10k shield, that might be a little bit of an oopsie. So I kind of hope they keep the shield powers from V series, but reduce the trigger powers to plus 5k. So I think that would be like the best of both worlds, and hopefully that is what they're working towards as well, because it's definitely too late to change any of that right now. Anyway, I've been discussing this longer than I actually expected to be discussing it, but I personally think that the Persona ride mechanic is pretty cool. Even if it's in every single nation, I think it will be fine, because again, kind of think about it like the stride power increase from just striding. It's just universal. You don't question it. Every single stride has the same power increase. It just sort of happens. So think of it as a game mechanic, and I think it's not really something that needs to be exclusive to certain clans. Otherwise, we're going to have kind of the problem of like Protect Force Axel again, where some clans just have better base mechanics. So I would rather they keep the base mechanic to be the exact same for every single nation, but then the effects within those nations are what add that flavor, add that cool creativity, and just like add that extra feeling of like, this is a Brandgate card, oh, this is a Dragon Empire card, you know, and things like that. And I'm pretty sure they're going to be fine in doing that as well. Anyway, that's going to be it for me today. So this was this week's installment of your overdress news. So next week, we're going to find out more about the goods and the various, you know, like sleeves and playmats probably they're going to be printing. So, you know, to actually be able to flex your cards and stuff like that. Maybe we're going to get some other information, you know. If there's anything you want to see, definitely be loud about it on social media, because as Mori Producer said, they are looking at social media, they're looking at what people say, whether in English or in Japanese, and trying to address those things that feel most urgent for the community. So if there's something you really want to see right now, just let them know on their social medias, even if it's the Japanese or the English account, and surely they'll probably bump it up in their list of priorities in order of what to cover. But on that note though, that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.